The Jews are very talented. Come on. 0.2% of the world's population, 22% of the Nobel laureates. Yeah, I don't think that's all just in-group preferencing.
So here he quotes the Nobel laureate and their overrepresentation from Jewish people. And he says, I don't think it's all ethnocentric bias. What do you know about it, Stefan? I mean, do you know the sequence of things you need to go through before you get to the Nobel Prize? I happen to know because I got to postdoctoral research, so I know a lot of the trajectory. And if you consider that there is a propensity for big universities as documented by Oons and by many others, there is already a bias at the undergraduate level that is absolutely disadvantageous to high IQ Asians. In fact, Harvard had to explain, why are you so biased against Asian? And they say, well, they don't score very high on our personality score. What is that? Well, it's essentially a Jewish professor who looks at the Asian guy and he says, 4.6. The personality, 4.6. And then he looks at the Jewish guy who says, oh yeah, my parents were very involved in the Jewish community. And he says, good personality, 5. I give you 5 out of 5 for this great interview. This is literally what's happening at Harvard, which determines the entry to undergraduate level, at which there is heavy overrepresentation of Jews. We're talking, depending on who we ask to and how we count the numbers, anywhere from 2 times overrepresentation up to 7 times overrepresentation. And some of the most extreme cases, which counts Jewish people who don't necessarily identify as Jews, I think they reach even more than 7 times overrepresentation. We're just at the undergraduate level. What happens? You want to get into science? You need to do a MSc. You're going to need to do a master. You're going to need to go through interviews. You're going to get selected by professors who are already Jewish. There will be even more bias at the MSc level. You want to do a PhD? You need to get your scientific study approved by 2 Jews who will remain anonymous. Literally. You need to submit your scientific paper to the process of peer-reviewed publications. So that means there's an editor, and of course Jews are overrepresented in the academic editing world. They are overrepresented at the professor level in universities. They take your study, you send them to the editor will send them to 2 anonymous professors who are also part of the overrepresented Jewish population of university professors. They don't even have to stand by their comment. They can destroy your scientific study there, or they can say it's good. They will remain anonymous. If you saw bias in the system of selection of undergrads at Harvard, which is not anonymous, imagine how much bias you can have for ethnocentricity in a system that's anonymized. We have no idea, Stéphane Molyneux, whether what you just said is true. We cannot affirm this because the system is not transparent. What leads to someone getting a PhD is not a transparent system. It lies in 2 anonymous observers who will never have to reveal their identity, but we know one thing about these guys. They succeeded at becoming professors in big university, and they are overrepresented, overwhelmingly Jewish. That's how the system works. Now you're just at the PhD level. You've already went through a system that has been now demonstrated to be biased against high IQ Asians in favor of Jewish people. You've been passed through a system that you have to do interviews with overwhelmingly Jewish professors. You then had to have your scientific studies reviewed by anonymous, most likely Jewish professors. Now you're only at the PhD level. You're going to have to start applying for national awards. And the national awards to become postdoctoral researcher, which I've obtained, and I'm not Jewish, so it's possible for a guy to go through this system. But man, the number of Jewish professors I had to convince that I was good is just, it's amazing. In my line of development, we're talking about more than 50% of the people who have approved my career up to postdoctoral level were Jews. My colleagues were Jews. The people who were reviewing me were Jews. The people who were giving me the awards were Jews. So now we are at the postdoc level. Oh, you haven't reached the Nobel Prize yet. What do we have at the Nobel Prize level? A system of extreme bias that is based on a corrupted sucking of services to a bunch of university professors that are on the Nobel Prize Selection Committee. I have personal, direct contact with people on the Nobel Prize Selection Committee and with people who have received the Nobel Prize. I dined with these guys. I've heard their stories. And I can tell you that I have direct confirmation both from someone receiving the Nobel Prize and from someone giving it, that the way to get a Nobel Prize is to go every year to a member of the Nobel Prize Committee and to give them flowers and a little watch and a little gift and say, I hope you think about me next year. I hope that you will consider me for getting this amazing award because I think my work was worth it. That is how you get a Nobel Prize. And so when I look at the ensemble system that brings you from an undergraduate to making great discoveries, to becoming a serious scientist, to eventually getting the Nobel Prize, all I see is arbitrary systems where bias can express itself at the highest levels. It is literally allowed. Now, Stefan, I find you a little naive to be saying 22% versus 1%. That's so much overrepresentation. It cannot be racial bias. What do you know about it, Stefan? Because when I see a system that has a little bias here, a little more bias here, a little more bias here, a little more bias here, what you have is a biased filtering system. And it may very well be the case that the amount of Jewish Nobel Prizes is entirely due to biases, because the system for choosing a Nobel Prize is not meritocratic at all. That's how it works.
Dr. Jonas Salk, one of the great scourges of the world was polio. Millions, iron lungs, I mean, FDR himself, I mean, in wheelchairs and so on, you could catch it from a swimming pool. It was a terror of the world, eliminated by a Jewish researcher who didn't even patent the vaccine. He said, can you patent the sun now? Could it be patented or not? I don't know, but...
And as I talk of PhD stuff, I see one of my students, well, a colleague / student of mine who I had coached during my PhD years. I'm so glad to see his picture here. He says, hi JF, long time since we done research together. Although I agree it's all about networking for Nobel Prize as well as peer-reviewed papers, you still need to have accomplished something. You do need to have accomplished something, but ultimately the person who gets the Nobel Prize, there's at least 20 other people who have accomplished great things too. And so I'm saying this number, this kind of 22% of Nobel Prize are Jewish, doesn't mean anything. It's not a good measure. I'm so glad to see him. I hope you delete your own chat, my dear friend. I will not say your name, but unless you have, if you have plans to still work in academia, I recommend that you delete your own chat, my friend. I've worked to be able to survive outside of academia. You have to make sure that you do have your plans, because once you say that kind of stuff, there's not a good chance that you're going to be peer-reviewed positively.
He still didn't even try. There are terrible events in the world, nothing to do with the Jews.
This is so fallacious. It's amazing that it comes from Stéphane Molyneux. The thing is, if we are talking about a negative input of the Jewish community into European civilization, it doesn't matter if there are other problems. We're talking about this problem. Concentrate on the question. The fact that there's other problems out there doesn't in any way negate this problem here.
I mean, the Pope is washing the feet of migrants and screaming at everyone to open up the borders to the third world horde.
All right, we can then have a discussion about how Christianity is bad, but it doesn't negate any aspect of the Jewish question.
Does that have anything to do with problems in Europe? No. Of course it does. The mob put Socrates to death without the Jews. Well, the Dark Ages had a lot more to do with Islam than the Jews.
Not an argument?
And when it comes to, Barack Obama wrote positively of black nationalism.
Not an argument?
Louis Farrakhan, the guy he's smiling with, wrote positively of black nationalism. And there's this belief that, we get all these whites together, white nationalism, and vastly majority white countries had civil wars. They had hundreds of years of religious warfare. They started World War I and World War II, which could easily have taken down the entire planet.
Oh boy, we need to talk about World War II, Stefan. World War II was not an intra-white war. World War II was a proxy war involving the international Jewish community. World War II has been declared even before the beginning of World War II. International Jewry declared war against Germany. World War II has occurred because of the desire of Germany to form a society for itself, for its own people. And Jews declared the war. They said, we don't want that. We want you live alone. And so this is very well documented. You can Google it. Those are facts. Those are not conspiracy theories. Just Google. International Jewry declares war on Germany. And so don't tell me about World War II as being something that whites have done, independent of the Jews. The Jews were extremely involved in the questions surrounding World War II.
We have to start judging people by the quality of their arguments, not by the ethnicity of their heritage or the collective ambiguous beliefs of a larger tribe. So yes, if you want to look at central banking, if you want to look at the media, yes, there are a number of Jews in there. And
all right, those are interesting points. That's a contribution to our second question. Our second question was, what is... I paused this face on such a ridiculous face. Let me try to unpause it here. Okay, that's better. That's a contribution to our second set of questions, which was, how do they influence the societies they live in? And yes, Jews influence societies they live in through academia, mainstream media, the financial sector, and their contribution to usury practices,